It's time for another Elden Ring challenge run. That's all I got for a cool intro. But yeah, welcome back. Today's run is basically, can I beat the game without using my primary source of healing, the Flask of Crimson Tears? We've seen level 1 runs, we've seen only shields, but have we seen nobody using the Flask of Crimson Whatever, you get the point. And for those who voted on my community poll for the next challenge run, this is also your vampire build, so here are the rules. Obviously, no flasks for healing, or incantations, or any sort of consumable item. Life-stealing weapons, weapon arts, armor sets, or talismans will be my primary source of healing. Nothing else. And this also includes the open world. I will not use a single Flask of Crimson Tears throughout the entire game. And I decided that bleed weapons are allowed, but I'm not gonna use the OP meta ones like Rivers of Blood, Moonveil, or anything of the sorts. That would be boring. And of course, I'll be going for a vampire-like aesthetic. I always like to collect all the great runes, so why not? I'll do that too. And yeah, that's about it for the challenge. I'm being kind of loose with this one since my primary source of healing is gone, so I'm not going to give myself all these extra to-do list items. And that's about it for the intro. So, without further ado, my name is Josh, and I hope you enjoy. I chose the Bandit class because he has a history of stealing, and I'll be stealing life from the bosses, so it sort of makes sense. As I was creating my character, I discovered this. It's not really a discovery, I just thought it was funny. So my first step was to acquire the Devourer's Scepter, considering its weapon art steals the HP of nearby enemies. After that, I did the old dragon farm for the stats, and headed towards the lakes to upgrade my scepter to +4 thanks to my main man, EG. That's my first weapon. The other weapon I had in mind was the Great Star's Hammer. This hammer heals you per hit 1% HP, which is better than nothing, plus there's an Ash of War later on that abuses this passive skill, which you'll see. So with that, Limgrave Tunnel was invaded by me for the stones, and I gathered the two sides of the medallion and headed towards the Atlas Plateau. Luckily, the Great Star's on a carriage and not locked behind a boss or anything like that. Next was Rey Lucario Crystal Tunnel to grab some extra smithing stones, and bada bing bada boom, we have the Great Stars at +10. Now, I feel like I'm prepared for the first boss. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Luckily, these two weapons are both great hammers, so I can power stance with them. Margit was, definitely a boss. I've never had an easier fight with him. It's probably because my, weapons were upgraded to mid-game, and yeah, it was way past the standard for Limgrave. This fight was as easy as pronouncing my name. Yeah. Next up was Godric, and yeah, I don't have much to say about this fight because just like Margit, I was a bit too strong for this fight, but that's okay because things will even out eventually. But yeah, Godric went down very easily, and we got our first great rune. I was still missing a few things for the build, so I decided to gather a few items such as the Bloodflame Blade, the Dragon Seal for the blood magic, things like that. I went to the Atlas Tunnel for the second Somber Smithing Bell, barely escaping with my life because, yeah, I was very aggressive. Funny enough, these dungeon bosses provided to be kinda tough in certain cases because, I would have to go through the entire cave without healing, of course, and I'm bound to get hit here or there. So starting a fight below half health gets you a bit tense, I'm not gonna lie. The Sealed Tunnel was next, and it was actually pretty easy. Totally didn't die 3 times. I was cool. Leave me alone! I decided to gather both the Blessed Dew Talisman and the Royal Remains armor set to gain some additional healing. The Dew Talisman basically replenishes my health constantly, although not much at all, 2 HP per second. That's like a pube hair of health. And the Royal Remains armor set restores my HP when it's low, below 18%. But hey, combine it together, it's not terrible. I could wear the entire armor set too, but fashion is what I live for, so later on when I find better attire, I'll replace it, but I'll keep the legs and arms. I also gathered the Somber Stone Bell 1, not because I needed it, but because I wanted blood on my hands. I am a vampire after all. Or, I guess the Falling Star Beast doesn't have any liquids inside of him. He's just mainly made of rocks. I wanted rocks on my hands. So with that, I had 2 paths to choose from. I could go to Rykard in order to acquire his Blasphemous Blade, or go and kill Rennala because I didn't do that yet. Rykard isn't my problem, rather it's the Foreskin Noble that I'm worried about, but the Academy I had to do anyway, and there's a neat path to the Volcano Manor from there, so that's where I went to go. Well, that was a boss fight. This knight this time around was much harder than Radagon's wolf and nearly killed me actually. I didn't feel like going back and, going through the whole thingamabob, so I just waited for a couple of minutes at the entrance until my health reached to full. Just kidding, I got impatient and I went in early anyway, which is actually totally fine because the Devourer's Scepter sucks the HP out of people, so that's exactly what I did. This fight really emphasized how slow the weapon art is because, I would try to use it and then get interrupted by someone throwing a Harry Potter book at me. It wasn't exactly the best weapon art in the game. Nonetheless, they did no damage and phase 1 was really easy. Phase 2 was actually much easier because I'm just that good of a player. I also had weapons for mid-game, but we could ignore that fact for now. And yeah, I killed her before she even summoned anyone.
Weave thy night into being.
I'll tell you what else she can weave. Alright. The next step was to probably get another good weapon that recovered my health, so early Rykard it is. This won't go terribly wrong. Again, I was more worried about the Foreskin Noble, so let's see how that went. And actually wasn't too bad. The shortcut to Volcano Manor involves being sucked into an Abductor Virgin, which is the strangest name for an enemy. But you have to fall down this ledge, which you obviously take a lot of damage from. And since I can't use any flasks to heal, my solution was to use the Devourer's Scepter's weapon art near some slugs. And then I would have full health for the fight and survive the lava. It was a pretty neat aha moment for me. I just thought I'd share that with you. I fought the Noble, and honestly, it was really easy. I guess I just have PTSD from the duo, but yeah, he didn't really give me any trouble. Even if I was low on health, I would hide behind a pillar and use the weapon art and, regain enough HP to take another hit. So, yeah, pretty easy. And as expected, Rykard didn't give me too much trouble either, although I could only take 2 hits for the entire fight, my healing factor couldn't recover enough health in time, and my usual weapons were off the table. Regardless, you can stunlock Rykard in the second phase, that's easy, and the first phase isn't all that bad if the snake doesn't shoot poison at me or produce a magnitude 8 earthquake. If that doesn't happen, it's kinda easy. And now we have access to the Blasphemous Blade. This blade has the weapon art known as Taki's Flames that restores a considerable amount of HP if it lands on an opponent. It also restores HP per kill, which is pretty good. Ironically, I didn't even use this weapon too often throughout the run. The 2 Great Hammers was my main source of damage, and yeah, you'll see how broken it is later on. Actually, you'll see it in the next fight with Morgott. But first, it was time to get the third talisman, the Assassin's Crimson Dagger. This talisman restores HP with a successful critical hit, so yeah, this would be very useful. Wait, hold on, that's not it. Wait a minute, I think I got the wrong address. Give me a second. There it is. And listen, I know I could have gotten these talismans earlier, but whatever. You could have liked the video earlier. Nobody's perfect. To Leyndell Capital, but first to take care of this tree hugger. Fantastic. I fought Godfrey first because it was 1 AM and I was delirious, but I beat him in 2 tries, so yeah, it wasn't too hard. I was still at a point where my damage overcompensated for the lack of healing, but that would change very quickly, trust me. The critical hits recovered a juicy amount of HP and gave me a chance to tank a couple more hits, so I thought to increase my staggering capabilities even more. Totally forgot about the Wondrous Physic at this point, so I just grabbed it very quickly before going into the sewers. I mixed the Bubble Tear to help me tank an additional hit and the Stone Barb Crack Tear to break posture more often. After that, I burned some Master Hands from the Zelda series in order to grab a Somber Stone 7, so now I could upgrade any special weapon I wanted to +9, baby. I decided to save this for the Blasphemous Blade. I was gonna use the Great Hammer duo first before I switched weapons. It turns out I made the right choice because apparently Morgott is not a big fan of big boy hammers. Without question, the easiest fight of this run so far. I died a few times, don't get me wrong, but that's because I was being too aggressive, but the fact that I nearly killed him every single time really shocked me. Combined with the Stone Barb Tear, Morgott would be stunned constantly, and he basically couldn't do anything. All it took was 2 consecutive jump attacks and he would be kneeling, ready for penetration. After the first critical hit, he would bleed and always go for the Swords of Revealing Light attack, which gave me more than enough time to stagger him again. By the time I got in a 3rd attack, it would trigger the second phase well below half health. After that, it was pretty easy. Also, in case you didn't notice, I was eating raw dumplings during this fight so that I would be poisoned for the entire fight, to make it at least a little bit more difficult. It didn't. Well, with that surprisingly easy victory under my belt, I grabbed the Blasphemous Blade and upgraded it to +9. I wanted to dual wield 2 of them, but apparently I couldn't duplicate another sword, but whatever. It sucks though. I was pretty bummed out about it, so to cheer myself up, I got the Omen Cloak, and I have to say, I look sexy. It's like I'm from my favorite movie, Tweely.
Vampire.
Star Scourge Radahn is next, and I have to say, I struggled a bit. He would kill me in a couple of hits, and trying to stagger him with only one greatsword is kinda tough, even with the Stone Barbed Tear. Both hammers would have been better for this fight, but I was persistent in using the Blasphemous Blade. The Taki's Flames recovered so much more HP than expected, and I was happy to see it would be incredibly useful. Plus, Radahn isn't the type of boss to dodge things, because he's too big, so that really helped out. Radahn has these combos that can be deadly, but if you remember this simple acronym, everything will be alright. STTC. Stick to the crotch. This works for so many bosses in the Soulsborne series. If you just remember STTC, you'll be alright. Even in real life, if you stick to the crotch, everything will turn out okay. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. But besides that, Radahn also has these very well telegraphed attacks when he reaches a certain HP threshold, like the Gravity Slam for example. As long as you're behind him for that one, you'll be fine. And yeah, by the time he was in second phase, he was almost dead. Star Scourge Radahn down in under 10 tries. And it wouldn't have been possible without STTC. It was time to acquire the last talisman for this run, the Godskin Swaddling... No, I did say it right. Swaddling Cloth. Basically what it does is I can recover health with successive attacks. So for this build, it's pretty good. I grinded some more levels and increased my vigor to, I think, 40 at this point because Elden Ring decided that everything can kill me in 2 shots now. So that's fun. I could tell that I wasn't ready for this fight, but I did it anyway, and I got my fleshy piece of cloth. And we're looking pretty good, and we'll look even better with the Prelate Charge Ash of War. It's basically a battering ram of pure fire, and combine this with the Great Star's Hammer, not only does it deal nice bleed damage, but it also heals me. Not to mention the Godskin Cloth as well, it's an insane combination. My first test subject was the Fire Giant, and even though my main 2 weapons dealt with fire stuff, I wasn't too worried about it. As you can see, the Prelate's charge with the Great Stars recovered so much health, I basically didn't even need to heal at this point. That is if I could use the weapon art properly, and in later fights this wasn't gonna cut it. But for the Fire Giant, since he's a huge target, I could start my charge underneath him, and if I was any danger, I would just charge away. The bleed from the Great Star Hammer worked out great as it stacks with the Charge Ash of War 2, and with the Blood Flame Blade, and oh, it was good. Everything was going fine, until I got a little careless and I charged into a fire pillar. I died, of course, but so did the Fire Giant. And since I had the remembrance, I knew I was safe, so technically that was my first try. 2 Mog, baby. I killed the Tarnish Eater for the final Somber Stone, and I have to say, just look at my character. He is covered in blood. Now that's a vampire. Vampire? Now we have an epic robe that really matches the fancy Dracula look. Mog was my next victim, but I forgot that it was 3 AM, and you know what that means. I forgot to record my attempts, so that's fun. It didn't matter anyway, I didn't get anywhere with it, and I decided to come back to him later. What I actually did was I ventured towards the Haligtree to gain some extra levels and smithing stones to fully upgrade my hammers. I stole this Ancient Dragon Smithing Chocolate super mega fun stone from this dude, and I ventured towards the Loretta of the Haligtree. She gave me quite a struggle since I'm not exactly an offensive build, and I refuse to abuse the bleed status in order to beat the bosses. So I switched to my dual hammers once more, and I have to say, I'm so happy that power stancing is in this game. If I can't abuse bleed, I'll abuse the stun because these hammers are so good at it. It's not even funny. I got lucky and Loretta buffed right before she was about to die into her second phase, so it was pretty easy after that. The main reason I wanted to travel here early was for the Erdtree avatars that drop an insane amount of runes, I mean at this point in the game, and an ancient Somber Dragonstone. So that's exactly what I did. Boom! Erdtree's dead. Boom! Ancient Somber Stone obtained. And boom! I killed this Great Worm too, just because. Now both of our Great Hammers are max level, and I think we can take on the Foreskin duo. I was correct. Having 2 hammers is just overkill at this point because these 2 skin brothers couldn't do a thing. It was super easy to get past the initial 2v1 because the Apostle would just kind of stand there waiting his turn, and yeah, that was it. This was about a 3-minute fight on my successful attempt, and it was probably the smoothest fight I've had with this duo thus far. Doesn't make them any less unfair and stupid, but if you're struggling against them, use any 2 great hammers and healing items, of course. And yeah, I took them down. Again, without using a single healing item, just the build alone. Malekith was next, and again, I guess this is the boss in this game that just gives me the most trouble. I don't know why they gave him so many AoEs that drain your health, reduce your maximum HP, like, it's a lot. I already had to use so many skill points to make my HP bar thick. Don't Slim Shady that bar down. Anyways, it was always the second phase. I would always use the Wondrous Flask halfway through right before the second phase to stagger him more often in that phase. And when I did beat him, I didn't take a single hit in the second phase because he was too busy being staggered. I'm glad that these two hammers have some form of life-stealing capabilities because this would be impossible without that. I'm already not using any flasks, obviously, so this was much harder than any previous run. Malekith goes down as my blood pressure goes up, and you know what, to celebrate, let's see how I fare against Malenia because that's what I need at the current moment, why not? You know what, I was wrong, I apologize. Honestly though, this fight is very doable. I almost got her a couple of times, I just need to be a bit more leveled up. Gideon is next on my hit list, and just watch.
She'll take Queen Mother looks for us. Continue to struggle. On to eternity.
He didn't even do anything. I wasn't even fully invested in the fight. I was eating rock candy. Anyways, with Giddy Diddy out of the way, I can finally face perhaps my new favorite boss in the game, Godfrey. What really helped out during this fight was the extra staggering damage from both hammers. Again, that's kind of like my only offensive tactic, as well as the healing per hit from the Great Stars. It allowed me actually to survive an extra hit sometimes that really mattered. The Blasphemous Blade is good, and I did try to beat him a couple of times. I almost did, but the only recovery from that weapon is the weapon art, which isn't great against a hyper-aggressive boss like Godfrey. Still, one of my favorite bosses though. I only have 3 bosses left, and that was Mog, Malenia, and Radagon and the Elden Beast, so I guess 4. You get what I'm saying. I went back to Mog, and unsurprisingly, the Great Hammers did the charm. Previously, when I was only using the Blasphemous Blade and forgot to record my encounters, it wasn't doing enough damage, since Mog is resistant to fire. The Scepter deals fire damage too, don't get me wrong, but the Great Stars doesn't, so it added on to the staggering damage, if anything, and together the damage was pretty good. I actually got lucky. Most of his swings went over my head, and I knew that he likes to pimp walk sometimes, so I took advantage of that. If he's pimp walking, you basically can take the initiative, and then he won't attack until he starts running at you, or until you attack him first, so you get the timing after a couple of tries. Still one of my favorite bosses, but against the Great Hammers, he was nothing but a mole. Whack-a-mole. Alright, I'll see myself out. And into Malenia's arena, where I completely destroyed her. I only got hit once during her second phase, and that was with the Bubble Tear protecting me. This fight was actually a lot of fun because if I were to get below half health, it was super easy to recover. Yeah, see what I'm saying? It's a great combination. Combined with the Blood Flame incantation, I was dealing bleed damage on top of that, like, it was so good. I fought Malenia so many times at this point that I knew where to counter her, especially with big boy weapons, because I love those type of weapons, and I would use them constantly throughout my first playthrough, so I kind of knew my way around it. This fight did take me about an hour, but overall, I defeated Malenia quite easily without using my main source of healing, recovering health only through my Great Star Hammer pretty much. This is one of the reasons I love Elden Ring so much, because memes like this are possible and viable against one of the toughest bosses in the entire series. Of course, you have to be skilled, and fortunately for me, I'm that guy. Don't zoom in on my vigor, please. Malenia's Great Rune is pretty cool. It's essentially Bloodborne's mechanic of recovering some HP after getting hit, so I was really excited to see how the additional acid would help with the build. I never used it before, so what better way to test it out than against the final boss of the run, Radagon and the Elden Beast. And honestly, it wasn't so bad. Radagon was a pushover this time around because staggering is the meta in my eyes. It's ridiculous how much these hefty weapons bring these bosses to their knees. The Elden Beast even got stunned multiple times, which I've never seen before until this point, and although my damage was lacking, I was able to survive because of Malenia's rune that recovered a huge portion of my health when I got attacked. The orbs also felt off too. I don't know if they did something with them or if there was like a subtle patch that I missed, but it didn't seem like they were tracking me as well, which I'm very glad to see. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I beat Elden Ring without using a single flask of Crimson Tears, no incantations for healing, and found alternative ways to stay alive with the vampire build. This challenge was a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend it if you're willing to test your skills. My time, by the way, was 18 hours, 34 minutes, and 45 seconds. Give or take a couple of minutes for bathroom breaks, but yeah. Fellow friends and family, thank you so much for watching, and keep them coming. These challenge runs are so much fun. I want to get more creative with them so that, you know, when someone sees the title or sees the build, they're like, I've never thought about it that way. I really want to get very creative with it. Yeah, that's all I have for you today. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stick to the crotch.